Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today, we're going to take a look at James Bradberry and Adoree Jackson, two cornerbacks for the New York Giants. It could end up being one of the best tandems at the position in the NFL. I'm ecstatic about this group. They have complementary strengths, and I think that Patrick Graham can really utilize them in a way that you can extract the most value from both of them. Of course, Bradbury coming over from Carolina, nobody expected him to be that good, but when you have fantastic coaches, it maximizes a player's capabilities and production. And I think Adoree Jackson, who has produced well over the past couple of years, barring the injuries and whatnot, will even be elevated by Graham himself, using that man coverage style that we talked about in the last video, talking about how the defense is trying to, incorporate this new identity where they're playing more man coverage, getting after the quarterback more effectively because of that, running, more cover ones, more cover zeros, sending extra blitzers, and getting back to the roots of Patrick Graham. That's kind of where we see this defense going and how Patrick Graham sees it. He even said it himself. So I'm excited to see where this defense goes. Adoree Jackson is going to play a huge part in this. We wanted to take a look at a couple of clips from both Bradberry and Jackson to give you an idea of their complementary strengths and why they're going to be so good next season, Anthony. But before we dive into the film, and really we'll talk about it a little bit just before we dive into that, the good stuff. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good, and I think that this cornerback duo for the Giants could be one of the best in the NFL next season, if not the best. These are both great, phenomenal outside corners who are both proficient in man coverage, but the way that they play their coverage is a little bit different due to their, let's say, athleticism. Their athletic traits cause them to play the coverage differently, but just as effectively as one another. Obviously, James Bradberry, I think he had the highest single coverage grade in the NFL, according to PFF last year. He had the most pass breakups amongst anyone in single coverage last year. He was phenomenal one-on-one. He is the corner that you want. But opposite of him, the Giants had some struggles, but now it seems like they kind of fixed that with our guy, Adoree Jackson. And I think Adoree Jackson is another guy who's phenomenal in one-on-one coverage, but he's got the speed to play closer to the receiver, where James Bradberry doesn't really have that speed. He's not really a fast guy, but he is a very technically sound corner. He's just such a smart player and such a good technically sound cornerback that he is so phenomenal in coverage based on that, which is completely different than Adoree Jackson, who really uses a lot of his athleticism. So it's interesting to see the differences between those two players and how two different means can have the same end, where you still have two really talented outside corners, but they just do it in a different way. And I think that's interesting. Kind of gives the Giants a little bit of versatility on the outside and really gives them a huge upgrade of talent with Adoree Jackson at CB2.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. The end result obviously is to create pass breakups, turnovers, and really lock down opposing wide receivers. And the Giants have two guys that do it very differently, but just as adequate. And I think that is the strength that the Giants now have on defense. They got a CB2. They didn't just go out and get a CB2, guys. They got a CB2 who fits exactly what they needed because they can expose matchups now, when it comes to Tyreek Hills of the world, or the Allen Robinsons. And I have a couple clips here, 3 or 4 for James Bradberry and 3 or 4 for Adoree Jackson. And you're going to see the style of receiver that they're covering mostly is totally different. You'll see James Bradberry taking on the guys like Mike Evans, the Allen Robinsons, DK Metcalfs, and you'll see Adoree Jackson taking on guys like, he even took on Julio Jones in one of them, which you wouldn't expect. He took on Calvin Ridley, who's a little bit smaller, more shifty. He took on Tyreek Hill, and you'll see how well he plays against them, the style of football he plays, and it's adequate. It's really nice to see a player of his size. He's very aggressive. He plays up at the line of scrimmage. He plays press coverage, and then James Bradberry more or less thrives in that off-ball man role. So we're going to dive into the film here. Take a couple of minutes just looking through this, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy, what you see in terms of these two players and what they offer the Giants moving forward. Okay, so right off the bat, we have the Giants. You have James Bradberry on the far side of he's actually in the slot on the bottom of your screen. And you don't see James Bradberry in the slot very often, right? James Bradberry never is in the slot. And right here, they have him there. They're really playing the matchups. He's up against James Washington. He got some speed to him. But James Bradberry is just so reactionary. You're going to see as this plays, he trails him perfectly, and he notices the second that ball comes in, he sees it. And when you see it from the all-22 angle, you'll see he gets his hands in there. He's so quick to react. Remember Eli Apple back in the day? The guy was always all over the place, couldn't get his head turned around, could never locate the ball. James Bradberry, one of his strengths is locating the football and making plays on it, even as the receiver is hauling in that pass. So that's what you really need. A great cornerbacks are able to do that, reactionary player, and I think that's what makes him so good.
Yeah, I mean, he's tremendous. He doesn't really necessarily need to start off in the press coverage. He can play off and then recover really well. That's one of the things that we'll see in another clip as well with James Bradberry. He has excellent recovery speed and awareness there. And then this play, I really like, he's able to get the physicality, get the ball knocked out at the end of the play, because he did that all season long. I remember against Allen Robinson, this play right here, there was a few where they threw it up to the receiver, 50-50 ball. They had a chance to go up there and get it. James Bradberry is too strong. He's going to rip that ball out as he does on this play. It's phenomenal defense. He's in perfect position on the coverage there. It's just a slot fade with no safety help. I think the Giants were playing some cover one there. And that's something that they liked to do a lot in the beginning of the season, but had to switch away from due to their lack of talent at CB2. But now you're going to see them play a lot more of this coverage, a lot more of this cover one, where you just have one safety over top, and then you have James Bradberry lock somebody up. You have Adoree Jackson lock somebody up, and then you're pretty much in good shape right there, because now you don't have that big weakness at CB2. So I love what James Bradberry is able to do here, the physicality through the end of the play, play through the whistle, knock that ball out, and not necessarily have to play press man coverage to stick to a guy like Glue.
Yep, exactly. And also really interesting here, you'll see the line of scrimmage with the Giants. They're all in 2-point stances here. They're actually not there's nobody in a 3 or 4 point stance. They're all standing. So they're trying to confuse that Pittsburgh offensive line. Really interesting there. Didn't see that very often, but Patrick Graham was trying to get creative, trying to, cause Ben Roethlisberger to get confused. They did it against Seattle. It worked pretty well. But yeah, I think here it's just James Bradberry being in the perfect position, which he always seems to be. Perfect position to make a play. And that's really it. When you're in a position to make a play, it's just about executing, it's just about actually making it. But he always has himself in the right place to capitalize on, on his great location here. He's up against Allen Robinson. He held him to 14 yards, and this is a zone coverage play, but I just wanted to showcase him and at least one snap against some of the best receivers in the NFL. Allen Robinson's up there. He's a tier 1 wide receiver 1. And, he is so reactionary. You see him here just kind of sitting down in the middle of the field, and Bradbury has that spatial awareness, reacts. He jumps that ball. This could have easily been an interception. He had an interception this game, and he forced another one that Julian Love picked off. He could have easily had 2, maybe even 3 if he would have picked the one that Julian Love got. But I'll tell you what, he is so good at undercutting these routes. He's so good at reading the receiver's eyes. He's so good at recognizing when the break of the route is coming, and just everything that's going on around him. He knows nobody's coming behind him, so he has the ability to step up. He knows he has safety help over the top. So a very smart player, very capable of diagnosing what's happening on the field and seeing what's happening around him. And he just locked down Allen Robinson, one of the best receivers in the NFL. Like, what more can you ask from your cornerback 1 who's coming on in a new scheme in this first year with COVID?
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely locked up Allen Robinson in this game, and I do like that this is a clip where he's playing zone coverage. I think that's important to show because the Giants did play a lot of zone coverage last year, and James Bradberry, you could have argued, was the best zone coverage corner in the NFL last season. If not, he was definitely top 3 to top 5. He was phenomenal in zone coverage all season long, and you don't necessarily need to be playing man coverage to follow a receiver all game. He followed Allen Robinson all game, but he was making plays like that in zone coverage where he's lining up near Allen Robinson. Robinson's running into his zone. He's keyed in, and just great reaction time here. He breaks on the ball extremely fast, and he does undercut this. Could have maybe even had the chance to intercept it. If that was a smaller wide receiver with a smaller frame that he could have gotten through easier, probably would have been a pick. But Allen Robinson does have a big, wide frame, so it was kind of hard to get underneath there. As you see, Bradberry's arm is wrapped around Robinson. If that guy's a little bit smaller, it's probably a pick. But that's the thing with Bradberry. You want him physical. You want him going up against those big WR1s like Allen Robinson, and that's what he's really good at, man zone coverage. I think, this is a great clip to show, though, because it is zone coverage, and you can see just how great his reaction time is and how quickly he breaks on passes.
Yep, I agree. He has such long arms. You see his arms. He has such a good reach when it comes to getting after the receiver in that facet. So really great opportunity to see James Bradberry in zone coverage. The Giants played a lot of zone coverage last year to try and supplement that weakness at CB2. Here he's up against DK Metcalf, one of the most imposing physically receivers in the game, a huge body who's really capable of out-muscling. And he's also fast as hell. He's a super, just insanely fast receiver in addition to being so big. But here, Russell Wilson, this is a catch by Metcalf before we, fast forward through this clip. But Russell Wilson puts this on a dime. Most quarterbacks in the NFL are going to have trouble putting this on an out route right on the boundary and getting that arm strength and that arm accuracy into that spot. I mean, it's a tremendous throw. But James Bradberry, again, he's playing off-ball coverage here. That is really where he thrives. He does not want to let DK Metcalf get the best of him deep because DK Metcalf is a go route receiver. He basically, if you have no safety help, and the Giants are rushing a ton of guys here, as you can see in the line of scrimmage, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in the box, and they have 3 defensive backs on the side. So 7, they have 11 guys. They have nobody deep right now. They're setting the house. They probably have Logan Ryan in the middle of the field dropping back. But right now, it's basically James Bradberry is on an island. He's like, I cannot let this guy get by me. He's like, this is why he gives him that little extra space. But playing this far off is about 10 yards off, 9 yards off from him. He still has the speed and makeup and recognition of this play. That's going to be an out. It's going to be an out route because Russell Wilson does not have the time to wait for James Bradberry or for DK Metcalf to get downfield. So James Bradberry breaks on this, and he almost makes a tremendous play. And it just shows you just how great of a corner he is to be able to diagnose this with no safety help over top. And he's able to almost undercut this route. And he sees this in his arms. He almost gets there. From the other angle, you'll see. But, I mean, it was a tremendous throw. There was a very small margin of error there for Russell Wilson. Most quarterbacks, you're looking at Mitch Trubisky, some guys who are not Russell Wilson. This is a pass deflection, or maybe even an interception. Most quarterbacks are not even going to attempt this throw. That's not even in their wheelhouse. So just a tremendous play by Bradbury, even though this was a reception. He was in the right place at the right time. Most quarterbacks are not making this throw.
Yeah, I love the coverage here. This is a bluffed cover 0 into a cover 1. You see Ryan drop back, and Peppers actually does end up playing some man coverage here. But I think the key takeaway here for James Bradberry is just how he plays this. Of course, as Alex mentioned, this is a dime. This is a beautiful throw by Russell Wilson. Absolutely perfect. But I think the way that he plays DK Metcalf is important to take a look at, because when you have a guy like DK Metcalf who's 6'4" and just shredded, every single muscle is perfect on his body, he's like Hercules, you're going to have to respect that. You're going to have to respect his speed and his vertical prowess. So Bradberry does have to play off here, but he does play to the sticks. He starts to break down on the sticks. As you see, he doesn't continue to backpedal. Once they get to about the sticks, he starts to slow up and gets ready to break on this ball. He breaks on it. He's there. He's in position. It's a really, really good throw, and it's a pretty good route by Metcalf as well. It's a nice speed cut out, and he does cut pretty well considering the route. And yeah, Bradberry breaks down on it. He almost gets there, just not enough. It's a perfect throw, but I do think the way that he plays it is interesting to look at, because he could have played it one of two ways. You back off and then you break down at the sticks, or you get up in the wide receiver's face and try to jam them at the line of scrimmage. But how many corners are going to be able to jam DK Metcalf at the line of scrimmage with no safety help over top? How many are willing to do that? Probably none. And you probably shouldn't do that. This is probably the wise technique to take here by James Bradberry. And I agree with Alex. He did play it well. It is just a perfect throw. You could maybe say he could have played a little bit closer up at the line of scrimmage, but as you see, they're not even far from the line of scrimmage by the time this play is complete. This is just a quick 5-yard out. So Bradberry's kind of just sitting on that 5-yard out in the first place. He just also had to respect the vertical prowess of DK Metcalf over top. So he breaks on it. It's almost there, but it's just such a perfect throw. Sometimes perfect throws can be perfect coverage.
Yep, exactly. And now, as you'll see, James Bradbury really likes to take on those big bodies, right? If the Giants were playing Seattle again, maybe they have a Adoree Jackson on Tyler Lockett. They just have him traveling with a faster guy, a more shifty receiver. I know, Darnay Holmes took on Tyler Lockett a lot in that game, but they also had, Isaac Yiadom too. So it was a really interesting dynamic the Giants were playing there. But you have a guy like Tyler Lockett, you're like Adoree Jackson, go and man mark him, travel with him into the slot, and then allow, Darnay Holmes and Aaron Robinson to take on everybody else. So I think that's might be something they look to do in the future when you're facing a team that has multiple high-end receivers. But here you have Tampa Bay. As we know, Tampa Bay has a phenomenal offense, and James Bradberry did a pretty good number on Mike Evans. And this is just fantastic trail technique. He gets burned by Mike Evans to start this route, but his makeup speed, James Bradberry has actually pretty underrated makeup speed. He trails him pretty nicely, and he gets his arm out there and causes an incompletion. And it's nice to see that Bradberry has that speed, because you can see here, this is any other day, this could be a touchdown, right? Or at least a completion for 40, 50 yards downfield. And I mean, it's a good throw. It's around the boundary. He could have used another yard, 2 yards on it. But reality is, like, James Bradberry is just in the right position at the right time to make a play. And that's a lot of times what cornerback play is all about, being in the right spot to make a play. If you're out of position, if your ankles get broken in the beginning, you're way behind, you're going to be lost in when the break comes, when the throw is getting to the receiver. And James Bradberry has enough speed to get there. And I think he makes a really nice play here to cause an incompletion, especially against a big body receiver like Mike Evans, who's physical, a nice possession guy. And we're seeing James Bradberry dominate against some of the best receivers in the NFL. It's not like he's facing off against guys we don't know about, or practice squatters or undrafted free agents like Austin Mack, the Giants had last year. No shame to Austin Mack. It's just the reality of the situation. And, this is what the Giants have to deal with. Some of the best receivers in the game, they're going to have to do this next season too. And you have Devonta Smith, when you have Curtis Samuel, when you have Amari Cooper, James Bradberry did it against all of them. James Bradberry did a tremendous job locking down Amari Cooper twice last year and just did such a great job against someone. Look at this. I mean, look at that. Just reactionary football, right place, right time, make the play. He does it all the time. And it's tremendous to see him doing it against the best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, this is once again the Giants are playing that cover one that they like to play, or that Patrick Graham really wanted to play more of last year. Bradberry in the slot. This is man-to-man coverage on Mike Evans. And I think when you watch this play through, you do notice that there's a route combination where I think it's Scotty Miller's route kind of comes into close contact with Mike Evans, and it kind of trips Bradberry up, which is why he has to recover here, as you see there at the top of the screen. Scotty Miller's route comes pretty close to James Bradberry, and it causes him to get turned around completely, and then he has to recover, right? So, or at least that's Logan Ryan, I believe, is he's playing the coverage on the underneath route. So this was like a high-low read, basically. You're trying to draw the other corner into that one, and then you open up the slot fade to Mike Evans, basically. And as you see, James Bradberry did get a little tripped up as Logan Ryan almost ran into him there, or Isaac Yadam. I'm not sure which one it was. But he does recover, and that's the key, because this is the right read against this coverage. Just cover one, and you've got your slot receiver with a nice man-to-man matchup. You want to take the slot fade against the cover one, because the safety is never going to get to the sideline in time if you make a good throw here. And this is a good throw. You could say maybe it was slightly underthrown because Bradberry was able to recover and make up, but I just think that Bradberry has great makeup speed, and he does recover well. This isn't really one of those plays where you see him physically imposing a wide receiver or anything. This is just a play where you see him going up against a physically imposing wide receiver, gets beat initially, but has the recovery speed to make up for it and the awareness to get his hand out there. No pass interference or anything, is able to get to the ball. I think it's just perfect way to play that coverage in that cover one defense.
Yeah, I agree. And let's jump over to some Adoree Jackson film to wrap up. We have 3 clips here. And Adoree Jackson, a much different cornerback than James Bradberry. He's shorter, he's faster, he's more physical. And you'll see him at the bottom of your screen right now. He's up against, I think it's Calvin Ridley, and he's playing press, right? This is what he excels in, press coverage, bottom of your screen. He's manned up across the board. They're playing cover one. And this is just a tremendous play. You'll see he is physical. He's draped all over Calvin Ridley's back. No foul called here, so he's doing everything legally. And you'll see, he just look how his change of direction is what really stands out to me when it comes to Adoree Jackson. He's able to stop on a dime and react. And that's what you love about good, smaller cornerbacks that are physical. He could have easily been a nickel corner, and I think he's able to travel into the slot adequately. But I like his versatility in that facet, and I like that he can stop on a dime, react. Just a little hook right there. And this throw's a good throw. It's to the outside. It's a good enough throw from Matt Ryan, and Adoree Jackson just gets his hands up. He's a physical. He's all over the receiver without causing any flags or getting any penalties on him. And I think it's just a tremendous play. And that's what you're going to see from Adoree Jackson at the next level with the Giants. He's going to be that guy who's a physical guy. He can man up against more speedy corners and really out-muscle them for a smaller corner. It's really nice to see the Giants getting a guy who complements James Bradberry so nicely.
Yeah, I think that this is my favorite clip in this breakdown. I love the coverage here. I think it's just perfect. This is exactly how you want to play this route. It's just a curl route on the outside, but the technique and the ability to stop on the dime with the receiver is so impressive there by Adoree Jackson. The receiver, it's Calvin Ridley, one of the best route runners in the NFL, honestly, and he's able to just stick to him like glue. He's playing up, he's playing close press coverage. And, usually curl routes, if you got a good route runner, you're going to run that. You're going to really sell the vertical route, as Calvin Ridley tries to do there at the beginning of the play. You see him, drop his head down like as if he's going to go vertical, and then he turns around and stops. and Adoree Jackson just is right there with him. It's really, really impressive man coverage. That's what you talk about when you say that receiver is on an island with a corner. That is the island, and that's where corners get beat, when they're on that island. But Adoree Jackson just does an excellent job sticking with Calvin Ridley on this play. It's perfect coverage, and he breaks on the ball. Great breakup, and a super, super impressive play from Adoree Jackson there.
Yeah, and he trailed a lot of great receivers during this game. Julio Jones is another one. The next clip you'll see, Julio Jones catches the football, but it's just because it's Julio Jones. There's not much you can do sometimes against a receiver of that magnitude. But you'll see he's on Adoree Jackson's on the top of your screen right now. Just another little hook. They'll sit down and he makes the catch, but Adoree Jackson's all over him. Against a smaller receiver, this is an incompletion. Just Julio Jones having insane hands and so much power and strength. He outmuscles Adoree Jackson here, but it's as good of a coverage as you can get. He's on his back. Looks like Adoree Jackson slips a little bit at the end of this when he breaks on this route, and it causes him to kind of be able to step behind. But he still gets his hands in there, and he makes a good enough play for it to be an incompletion. Again, just Julio Jones. What more can you say?
Yeah, I mean, Julio Jones is literally one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. But what I want to point out here is the way that he plays this coverage. So you're going to see the technique by Adoree Jackson. And basically, he's going to play this trail technique. So if you watch it, he kind of allows Julio Jones to get a step. You see that? He's playing from behind, basically. And the reason that he's doing that, so at this point, you see him playing from behind. And that's kind of why Julio Jones wins there, is because of the trail technique. When you're trailing behind and then someone stops, usually you fly past in front of them. Adoree does a really good job stopping on that dime with Julio and turning around and contesting this catch. But that trail technique is important to point out, because the reason that you see him playing that is because Adoree Jackson is just so fast. So he can trail behind wide receivers, and as they go vertical, they're not going to, burn him and outrun him. He's going to be able to keep pace, even though he's trailing from behind and holding on to their hip. That's the key there with Adoree Jackson, which we're actually going to see, I think, on the next clip that Alex put in this. And I think that's ultimately why Julio Jones makes the reception here. But it's definitely important to note how he plays this coverage and how he plays it trailing behind Julio. And that's kind of what you do when you are such a fast corner like Adoree Jackson. And that's something where you don't really see James Bradberry play as much trail technique. You might see him play it sometimes, but I think you're going to see Adoree Jackson play that trail technique a lot more, run from behind the wide receiver rather than staying in front of him. I feel like Bradberry is oftentimes playing off and staying in front of the wide receiver. I think you're going to see Adoree Jackson a lot of the times play behind the wide receiver and then take it into the next gear and break it up from behind.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Adoree Jackson, he has the makeup speed to do that exactly. When you're playing trail, you have to have that speed to be on the back hip of that wide receiver at all times, no matter how fast they are, no matter how shifty they are. You have to be able to mimic those routes. And I think he does a fantastic job of that right here against Tyreek Hill. And this is why we signed Adoree Jackson, my friends. This is why the Giants went out and said, we need a corner who can match up against guys like Tyreek Hill, who can match up against guys like Jalen Reagor, match up against guys like Curtis Samuel, who can burn you downfield, who can burn you from the slot, who can burn you on multiple different route concepts. We needed a corner who can match up against those smaller, shiftier guys like James Bradberry just simply cannot handle at times. And Tyreek Hill is one of them. This is why you have Adoree Jackson, and this is why they overpaid for him. Some people might say they overpaid. Some people might say it's a fair contract. I don't really care. The fact of the matter is we have a cornerback who can match up against guys like this when we did not before. I didn't trust Darnay Holmes against him. I wouldn't trust Isaac Yiadom against him. I wouldn't trust James Bradberry against Tyreek Hill. The only guy I would trust against him right now is probably Adoree Jackson and maybe a couple other cornerbacks in the NFL who have that elite speed and elite makeup speed. So this is basically press coverage against Tyreek Hill on the outside. And you'll see Tyreek Hill just burns him straight off the bat, burns him. And makeup speed. And you'll see it from the other all-22 angle. Adoree Jackson has it. He's on his back hip. He knows he's going deep right here. The safety, it doesn't matter how fast the safety is. There's no way they're getting to the spot before Tyreek Hill. And he manages to get there, and he turns around, and that ball's right there, and he has a chance to intercept this. Instead, I'm fine with the pass breakup. He gets his hands in there. It's a great play, and I think this is what Adoree Jackson brings to the New York Football Giants. He brings elite makeup speed. He brings the ability to help lock down some of these elite receivers at the NFL level. The Giants have to play Tampa Bay. They have to play Kansas City next year. When you have guys like Scotty Miller, who's a pretty decent slot option, decent guy on the outside. I know they have a couple other great receivers too. Having Adoree Jackson really helps. When you have to play the Chiefs, you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, and you have someone like Adoree Jackson who you can depend on to man up on him and at least mitigate the amount of production he can post on a team. So I think that's a huge benefit. And then having guys like Xavier McKinney out there in the defensive backfield, another huge benefit. So really excited to see Adoree Jackson, guys. And he complements James Bradberry to perfection.
Yeah, again, this is a cover one man coverage with Adoree Jackson playing outside. And, usually if you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs and Tyreek Hill is lined up on that outside, you don't have the balls to play cover one. I mean, you're just not going to do that because Tyreek Hill is so damn fast. He's going to likely outrun your corner, and that one safety over top is not going to be able to rotate in time with the speed that Tyreek Hill has. This is a ballsy call by the Tennessee Titans defense, and the only reason they're able to make this call is because they have a guy like Adoree Jackson with that much speed at corner. So again, he's playing the trail technique. Of course, I'm pretty sure that every single cornerback who's ever played man coverage against Tyreek Hill has been forced to use the trail technique because you're not staying in front of Tyreek Hill with all of that speed that he has, especially when you're pressing. But really, it's just interesting because how many cornerbacks in the NFL actually have the courage and ability to play press man coverage on Tyreek Hill? I mean, Tyreek Hill running a go route, he's going to beat 90% of the cornerbacks that play in this league because he is so fast. And you are not going to play press man coverage on him because of that. But Adoree Jackson does it. He plays this press man. Now, of course, he kind of misses on the press. It's kind of an off press. It's a soft press coverage. So he's not jamming him at the line of scrimmage, but he is press man. And as soon as Tyreek Hill releases outside, he turns around and he just starts running with him. And he does a really good job there staying as close to Tyreek Hill as you possibly can. Because I know pretty much any other corner, there's going to be 5 yards of separation by the end of this play, and Tyreek Hill is probably taking this to the house. But Adoree Jackson, there's maybe 1 yard of separation, and that 1 yard is enough for Adoree to get his hand out there and break up the pass. So yeah, more trail technique and really just an insane display of athleticism by Adoree Jackson here. People are forgetting that this guy did run a legitimate 4.3, 40. Like, he is one of the fastest players in the NFL, and it shows up on a play like this where he's playing outside against the fastest player in the NFL, and he's able to keep stride with him pretty fairly and break up a pass like this, because this should have been a touchdown. This is the coverage that Patrick Mahomes wants here. Absolutely. This cover one, you want to bomb this thing to Tyreek, but this is perfect coverage by Adoree Jackson, and he's able to break it up against the fastest player in the NFL.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So we have a couple of cornerbacks here that we can feel pretty confident with moving forward. I'm super excited to see James Bradberry and Adoree Jackson in action and executing these different attributes that they do have, and they can really hold down some of these elite receivers at the NFL level. I'm excited to see how Patrick Graham utilizes them, because that's really the key here. How can Graham maximize both of their potential? We know what Bradberry offers under Graham, but what can he do with Adoree Jackson? How can he unlock some of those hidden attributes, hidden successes, and positives, because we know he did it with so many of the defenders last season. So I'm really hyped to see that, guys. But I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of Fireside Giants, breaking down some film, looking at Adoree Jackson and James Bradberry, what they're going to offer this team moving forward, because that's really a huge talking point for this upcoming year, especially with all the money they invested in him. 3 years, $39 million, my friend. So have a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch you guys on whatever day this video is dropping, maybe Saturday or Sunday. It's going to be pretty good weather, I think. If you're in Florida like Anthony, it'll rain at probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon, but it'll be sunny regardless. But my friends, thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.